I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step. Today, we have Mel Robbins, Kwik and Lane Wood on the show. Not only are these some of my absolute favorite conversations from the past year, but I personally selected these clips because they include these tangible, tactical takeaways to help us tackle the new year and prepare ourselves for transformation as we approach those why not now moments. And I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me on the Why Not Now journey over the past year. There's nothing more valuable than your time, and I'm honored and grateful to have shared time with you as we learn together. We are just hitting our stride, and cheers to the new year ahead. Before we get started, I want to tell you about my partners at Design Pickle. You know when you're in a pickle because you need a design, but you don't have the time or maybe even the skill to do it yourself. Many of us have been there. Design Pickle has been a lifesaver for me. Here's how they're set up. You pay a flat rate monthly fee, and you're given a dedicated designer for all of your needs. You heard that right. Unlimited graphic designs, unlimited requests, and the first 14 days are risk-free. You get a full refund if you cancel in the first 2 weeks. Why Not Now listeners like yourself get 30% off their first month at Design Pickle. You can go to designpickle.com/why not now to redeem the offer. For me, the process has been painless and ego-free. In fact, many of the posts you're seeing on my social media channels were created by my buddies at Design Pickle, specifically Jacob at Design Pickle. That's what's cool, is that you get a dedicated designer. I'm on a first-name basis with my designer. A mentor once said to me, just because you can doesn't always mean you should. Do what you're uniquely qualified to do. Design Pickle helps me do just that. Go to designpickle.com/why not now to redeem the offer. We tackle the most taboo topics on the Why Not Now show. Oftentimes, you're hearing guests share things they've never shared before. In the spirit of things we don't typically talk about, you should know that the Why Not Now show is supported by Poo-Pourri. Yep, the original before you go toilet spray. It's magic. My friends at Poo-Pourri have literally taken the smell out of you know what. This pure blend of essential oils stops bathroom odor before it begins. Visit poopourri.com, and Why Not Now listeners get 20% off with code Why Not Now. That's all one word. Also, you can now get Poo-Pourri at Bed Bath & Beyond. First up is Mel Robbins. She's a New York Times bestselling author, and she's one of the most booked female speakers in the world for a reason. She's providing specific tools to help people change their lives. Here's Mel talking about 2 of these tools that I now use daily.
Well, I think, in the past that they were driven out of anxiety and fear and stuckness that I just didn't enjoy. Except for being a public defender. I love that job, and my husband got into business school up in Boston, so that career change was driven by a life change. Mm-hmm. But for most career changes, it was literally either driven by curiosity or driven by just feeling so completely repulsed by what I was doing, that I just couldn't take it anymore, and I had to make a change. However, over time, as I have studied human behavior, as I have become more self-evolved, as I have developed the skill of self-monitoring, and as I have become extremely curious about not what people need to do to change, but how do you actually help people change? And what are the tools? Forget concepts. We all got enough freaking advice. What you need are tools. I've stumbled onto a tool that I had been using unconsciously for a long time and brought it to the surface. And it has been the single most accurate thing. I mean, the 5-second rule is a tool. What I'm about to tell you is another tool. And when you start to really dig into it, it will literally never lead you astray. So I call it I just call it the gauge, but you can call it the passion gauge. You could call it the energy gauge. You could call it the clarity gauge. Basically, I pay attention to whether or not I feel depleted or energized. And of course, along that scale of depleted versus energized, there's a whole host of feelings. When you're depleted, you're kind of like, meh. When you're, and think about it like a fuel gauge, like a car, you're on empty. Ugh. If you're a quarter tank, you're fine. If you're half tank, you're good. If you're 3/4 of a tank, you're like, great. If you're full tank, you're fully energized. You're awesome. And so I pay attention in business, in life, in relationships, in friendships, in conversations, in business deals, to whether or not I'm energized or I'm meh. Am I depleted by this? Am I energized by this? Are there aspects of this to deplete me? Are there aspects that energize me? And then I go to work and I consciously move away from the things that deplete me. I stop hanging out with people that deplete me. And I do more of what energizes me. And in fact, the reason why I have gone from being the most booked female speaker in the world last year to now launching a online course and publishing business that in 16 months flat is doing 7 figures. The reason why I was able to make that turn is because I started to notice that, holy shit, here I am, I'm making all this money, I'm on the road like crazy, my dreams are coming true, I'm impacting people's lives, I'm spreading the 5-second rule, but I'm depleted.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask you about that. That's a lot of planes.
Yeah, you never feel like you think it's going to get what you want. And that's important because the thing we think we want is never really what we're supposed to have. It's just the beacon that gets you moving. And along the way, you need to be paying attention to those signals, that inner wisdom that your body is sending you. And if you are in a job or you're in a relationship that depletes you, that is a very important data point. What are the things that you can do to shift that relationship or get rid of it or whatever so that it's more energizing? And so what I realized is I love talking about the 5-second rule. I love building relationships. But what depletes me is the travel. And what also depletes me is the fact that when I leave a stage, I may never hear from some of the people again. And I love the connection. I love the fact that we get hundreds of emails a day. And I mean hundreds. We have one person that works for my company that literally does nothing but answer emails to our inbox of people that have discovered the tools, that have questions. And so we have a human being that points people to more free resources online and answers questions. And so making that turn, that business turn, all came from this simple gauge.
So let's say someone's listening and they are working for XYZ company. Maybe they are working from a cubicle or they're on their drive to work and they're listening and they've always wanted to start a flower shop, but they've been doing this other job for so many years and they want to make this leap. How would you advise them to use the gauge as well as the 5-second rule, if it applies, to address the situation, which is basically a why not now situation?
Yeah. I mean, so first of all, clarity is present. You know what you want. The only thing that's not present is action. You've been busy thinking about the flower store, but you haven't actually done anything. And the flower store is not going to open by thinking about it. And you're actually not going to get clear about whether or not you want to open that flower store by thinking about it. You will only get clear and know whether you need to do it if you start working on it. And so there are two things that you can do. The 5-second rule is freaking unstoppable, most powerful tool you could ever use to break the habit of overthinking, break the habit of self-doubt, break the habit of procrastination. The second that you are like, I really want to be in the flower business. Great. Stop thinking about it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Start doing some research. Look up flower stores. Buy some books on it. Take a flower arranging course tomorrow. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Instead of going on Facebook, why don't you go drive to some flower stores and see if anybody has any part-time work on the weekends? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If they don't have it in your neighborhood, go to the next town over and look for it. Like there are ways to get started on something that require not thinking, but action. And so what I find is that everybody that's stuck is that what's missing is not thought. That's the problem. What's missing is action. And now here's the thing for the person that wants to open the flower store. So I once had a fantasy dream that I would open a bakery because I loved bakeries. I loved being in a bakery, and I loved walking into a bakery and smelling everything, and especially a beautiful bakery like a Barefoot Contessa or, some like fabulous bakery where everything just looks more delicious than the next thing, and, the coffee's amazing and whatever. So I went to work in one for a weekend. I thought this was going to be my dream come true, Amy Jo. I just thought this was going to be like absolutely the beginning of the next like biggest, most fabulous, incredible bakery of all time. It took me exactly 2 hours to realize I hate working in a bakery. I hate it. I hate smelling like carrot muffins. I hate refilling the napkin things. I hate refilling the milk and the half and half. I hate stacking the sugars. I hate waiting on people, for crying out loud. I hated everything about it. You know what I discovered? I discovered what truly energized me. What energized me about the concept of owning a bakery is that I actually thought it would be amazing to live near a bakery like that, to have the flexibility to be able to walk in the door every morning and get my coffee there.
A little different.
To have the financial freedom to be able to afford to do that, to have the work flexibility to be able to hang out there, and to have the people behind the counter go, oh, hey, Mel, how you doing? So for me, it was about community. It was about flexibility in work and in time. And it was about financial freedom to be able to afford that kind of luxury. It had nothing to do with running a freaking bakery. And so you may decide if you like flowers, because every time I walk into this particular flower place here in Boston called Winston's, I literally have a moment where I say, I miss my calling. I love flowers. No, I don't. I don't want to work, and I don't want to own a flower store. I want to be able to have the time to garden. And I want to know how to make a great arrangement. And I want to be able to afford to buy arrangements from Winston's when I need a special one. That's what that is about. Mm-hmm. That's it. So by getting out of it, you would never discover that thinking. It's only when you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that's the 5-second rule. The moment your instincts tell you to move, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you start counting backwards. That interrupts the thinking patterns in your brain. In the basal ganglia, it awakens your prefrontal cortex. It prompts you to move. It's a starting ritual for action. It'll work every single time to get you out of the habit of thinking and into the habit of exploring, of acting, of stepping outside your comfort zone, of building the bias toward action instead of the bias toward thinking. And so that is how you would use the 5-second rule. You'd use it to get out of your damn way and actually explore the thing. Mm-hmm. Because what you're going to discover when you start exploring it is maybe this is the best thing ever. I can't tell you, in this course that we're teaching, The Power of You, what's so incredible is we were just watching a bunch of the videos today that people have posted today. A woman, by the way, who had always dreamt of doing cake decorating. She's a real estate agent. So she's been talking herself out of this for years. Her first step was to take a course in it, which she did the first week of the online course I was teaching. She just got a full-time job at a local bakery. And she was taping this video in her car, and she's crying. She's super excited. And she's like, I have no idea how I'm going to balance this with real estate, but I'm just so ecstatic because I finally have stopped thinking about it. It's like unbelievable. It's a dream come true. And here's the other thing. A year from now, is it going to be a dream come true? I have no idea. That's where the gauge of depleted versus energized comes in.
If you want to hear the entire episode with Mel Robbins, head to the Why Not Now podcast, episode 45, on iTunes, Spotify, or SoundCloud. You can also visit amyjomartin.com/Why Not Now Mel Robbins to stream the conversation from my website. Next up, we have Jim Kwik, who is a world expert in learning. He helps people with everything from speed reading to memory improvement and how to achieve optimal brain performance. I asked Jim what he specifically has to share about how we can stay motivated and how we can keep our minds healthy.
Motivation, understanding human motivation, because I feel like we all know what we need to do, but we can't get ourselves to do it now. And so I think emotion is very important. I remember, and this is going to answer your other question. I recently got invited to Sylvester Stallone's home, and because there was a big boxing match there, and he was like, "Do you want to go watch the big boxing match of the year at my home?" And I'm like, "Yes, I totally want to watch a boxing match with Rocky." And I
yes.
and I'm not super. I love competition because I feel like competition, metaphorically, sports is a good metaphor for life. But I don't like people get hit in the head, so I'm a little bit conflicted with it. Anyway, I get there, I sit on the couch. Sly Stallone sits right next to me, and next to him is Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I swear, if you took a picture of this couch, you would be like, who photoshopped that Asian dude? But afterwards, going back to Why Not Now, is this. I was like, what does it take to be a champion, guys? Those champions they're the best in the world. What does it take? And I'll always remember what Arnold said to me. He said, Jim, the difference between an amateur and a champion is able to push past the pain period. And it's so interesting because for us to reach a big, audacious goal, right, a moonshot goal, like a lot of your guests that are on this podcast, they reach immense levels of success. There's obstacles and there's struggles and there's adversaries and there's difficulties. But those who really get through them are the ones that embrace their grit, right? And they persevere through it and they get through it. And I think what gets you through that is your motivation. And that's why I think asking the right questions, finding out what's most important to somebody when I'm working with a client helps to give them enduring goals and alluring goals instead of just SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, and that kind of thing. I don't, that's very left brain. But for me, I create heart goals. H is like it's healthy for all parts of my life. And E is it's enduring. It'll get me through the hard times. A is alluring because it pulls me through. It's so attractive. It's a bright light and it gives me lots of hope and it pulls me. The R is relevant because I find a lot of people's goals aren't relevant to their problems or to their values that's most important to them. And then the T in heart for reaching your goals and overcoming procrastination or setting and getting goals is T is truth. Is it your truth? So many people set goals for, why not now, but they set these impotent goals that they're not their goals. It's somebody else's truth. It's the goals set unconsciously by their parents or by the Joneses that live in their neighborhood or their coworkers or their team, but it's not theirs. And so, listening to myself talk to you about this, questions, writing them down, figuring out people's motivation, saying yes to something. Like I said, okay, I'll read a book a week. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but you say yes, like you say, and you'll figure out a way. And then taking the first step. Because so many people, there's this thing with Why Not Now, people want to change their habits. If let's say they don't floss and they really know flossing is good for them and they want to add longevity and it makes them live longer and all this stuff, then what I tell people is just floss one tooth. Just floss one tooth. You don't have to floss all of them, just floss one. And guess how many people just floss one and stop?
Not very many.
Nobody. Just like with reading. I tell people just read one word. They're like, oh, I can't read all the time, and practice reading. Okay, do me a favor, open the book and just read one word. Because these are what they call tiny habits, and you could start building momentum off of that.
So how do you keep your mind healthy? And I know you mentioned meditation and mindfulness, but feel free to add or expand or whatever.
And the things I'll say is very common sense, but it's also not common practice. So I'll give you 10 really fast things, and then I would ask people who are listening, maybe acknowledge that they are important, but then also acknowledge themselves for the areas where they can improve. For me, to keep my brain and my mind healthy, good diet, no specific order, good diet, because you are what you eat, and there's certain good foods, especially for the brain. Number 2 is getting rid of negative thoughts, because every time you say a negative thought, it's just a program that your supercomputer is going to run. I always tell people your mind is always eavesdropping on your self-talk. So you definitely want to keep it positive. The third thing is exercise. People are more physically active will always just have better mental acuity, mental focus, a better memory. Anything that's good for your heart is good for your head. I would say number 4 is brain nutrients, that if you have a fast food lifestyle, you should really supplement, especially in the B vitamins, omega-3s and stuff that's good for your brain. Number 5, and this is a big one, is a positive peer group. Positive peer group is because we are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. It's not just your neurological networks or biological networks, it's your social networks. And are you spending time with people that inspire you and motivate you and challenge you and uplift you and educate you? Number 6 is a clean environment. That's kind of obvious, but when you clean your environment, you clean your laptop, you clean your desk, you feel mentally, your mind just feels sharper. Number 7 is sleep. This is a huge one. I can't overstate this enough. You need sleep. That's where you consolidate short to long-term memory. When you don't sleep, you don't make good decisions. You don't have motivation. You can't focus. Number 8 is a big one, is brain protection. Living proof of that. Your brain is resilient, but it's also fragile. So wear a helmet and avoid accidents and extreme sports. Number 9 is new learnings. And I'd be preaching to the choir, because you're listening to this right now. You love to learn. But people don't know, is actually people who dedicate themselves to lifelong learning will live longer. It was on the cover of Time magazine. They had these super nuns living 80, 90 above. Half it had to do with their gratitude and their faith, but the other half is they were lifelong learners. So it added years to their life and life to their years. And finally, number 10, big one, stress management. We are under so much digital stress, digital distractions, digital demands in today's 21st century, but we grew up with a 20th century education that didn't prepare us. So that gap the amount of information that's doubling every couple of years with how we learn it, how we read it, how we remember it, how we absorb it, it's the same. That gap creates stress. So what are you doing to manage that stress for yourself? And one of the things, obviously, that I love is meditation. I do it twice a day, because I think in order for me, if I slow down, it allows me to speed up, because my martial arts teacher taught me this years ago that slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So I would say, look at those 10 things and, don't be overly critical, but you're like, I do some of them, but, I'm not getting enough sleep, or I'm not managing my stress, or this one person in my life's really bringing me down, or I haven't really moved very much lately, or maybe I could really, get by with, fixing my diet or whatever it is. And you fix, because everyone wants to know the one thing. There's never just one thing. Mm-hmm. I would say determine what's most important and focus on those.
If you want to hear the entire episode with Jim Kwik, head to the Why Not Now podcast episode 33 on iTunes, Spotify, or SoundCloud. You can also visit amyjomartin.com/Why Not Now Jim Kwik. That's KWIK, to stream the conversation from my website. And finally, we have Lane Wood. This episode was a top performer over the past year. And what I think is so cool about that is that, unlike some of the other guests on the Why Not Now podcast, Lane Wood isn't famous. He candidly shares how he transformed his entire life in 1 year. He did a complete 180. That included his health, where he lived, and his love life. I'm proud to call Lane a friend, and the fact that this conversation resonated with so many people tells me that we are all hungry to make some big changes in our lives. Here's Lane explaining how it started and what he did.
I decided that it was okay to just be insanely curious and allow myself to ask the questions that I had been fighting off for a long time. We don't ask ourselves questions a lot of times because we just don't want to know the answer. Why am I unhealthy? Why doesn't that shirt fit? To why am I scared of going on these dates? Why am I alone all this time? And I think for me, as I look at, step by step, this is a year of unfolding. It felt like it happened all at once, but across a year, as I got in shape, it cleared up this space in my mind where I was allowed to be confident. I was starting to like myself more. and to trust myself more. And as I began to do that, I began to ask more questions. If I can change this dramatically in this area of my life, what else can happen? And once you get into this mode of accepting whatever the answer might be, as you start asking questions and being willing to make the changes necessary to get yourself to that end, I think things can unfold really rapidly. In a course of, I'd been looking at moving to LA. Get this, I was going to move to LA. I was debating it. I was flying down back and forth to San Francisco, deciding what was I going to do. And my lease was up at my apartment, and the timing just really sucked. And so I just ended up signing my lease for another year, and immediately I regretted it. And I got an email 2 weeks after I had signed this digitally that said that they still hadn't received my signature. Even though I had the confirmation email, the building system had rejected it somehow. And I was presented this opportunity to leave and not have any repercussions. And I literally called U-Haul, rented a truck, started packing up a van, and drove away the next day. So I think once you become, maybe this is just me, but I had this opportunity, and I don't know, it just gets exciting once you're able to say yes to it. And if you can allow yourself to be in that flow, you can find yourself in some really healthy positions in a really fast fashion. I don't know if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And it's just having interviewed Billy Corgan, he made a comment about, we have this path and the universe, God, whoever you believe in. I have a friend who calls it potato chip, whatever. It has this path for you. And although it's not safe from human tampering. So we get in our own way often, but if we try not to. So in a way, I think the U-Haul, the universe not having that email in the system, whatever, is what you're saying, what you're talking about. It's kind of listening and being along for the ride at some point. But as I'm hearing you, it sounds like with the graduation of, oh, okay, I'm overweight, and the desire for more health, you just kind of graduated into these next steps and layers of your life. And you posted something on Facebook that it was a quote. I'm not sure who wrote the quote. You may be aware, but you said your new life is going to cost you your old one.
Oh, I remember that.
That's good. That's good. But it's in that one sentence, it goes to show you were ready for a 180. You were ready to really change. And so let's break it down. So before we hopped on, Lane, I was online and I stumbled across this TED Talk by Ash Beckman. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but she talks about closets. And she said, we all have closets that we need to come out of. Many of us have lived in several closets. And my closet is no different than yours. She goes on, she talks about how a closet is no place for a person to live. And really all that a closet is a hard conversation. And it's scary, we hate it, but it has to be done. Zooming in, what does that mean to you? When you say, I came out as gay, literally, that had to have been a why not now moment. And it built clearly by what you just described, but what did that look like? Was that a conversation? What happened? What was your first step in coming out?
Wow. I guess to allow some context to understand, how I ended up where I was, as, when you grow up in rural Oklahoma, you are, by default a part of the church, the Christian church, very, I would say Trump-land, Fox News, Christian upbringing. And I actually went to school to become a pastor for a little while. And I was a pastor for a little while. I was a pastor to college students in Tennessee, in New York City, and then in Austin. And so I actually spent a lot of time working for and inside of the church. And so a lot of my worldview early on was shaped by those experiences. And inside of that world, being gay just was not an option, especially in leadership, especially with the spotlight being shined on you. And Uh, so for me, even though, now I can look back and understand in hindsight how I was spending all of this energy creating a false narrative about who I was so that it was acceptable to other people. I did spend, the previous years before I actually came out, like coming out of other closets, which was, stepping away from my faith and that expectation from my family and, these groups of friends and people that I've known for a long time, and stepping away from their expectations to be a leader in a thing that I had no attachment to anymore, and being very definitive about that and moving away from it. So that was a big step for me, a few years ago. I was in Mexico and screaming out in the ocean to, whatever God is out there saying, I'm done being this guy. And so I look at that as one of the, first major coming out moments, for me. But as I look at, just this last year of moving to LA and finding myself in a position to where I looked around and there was nobody watching me. In San Francisco, I had a bit of an audience because I was, in that crowd. And I think if you've ever spent any time in the tech industry in San Francisco, there's a lot of posturing and a lot of,
Sure.
competition.
Especially,
and
not to cut you off, but I think it's important to know you've worked for some of the biggest companies that I've had crushes on. I mean, Warby Parker, Charity Water. It's just, you've definitely been in that world pretty deep early on. So I think it does. Your point about being in LA where no one was watching it really strikes home with me. I think that's maybe we have to remove ourselves sometimes from our physical geographic situation in order to come out of our closet. But carry on. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just think it was important to know.
No, it's great. It is of note because, I've built this sort of expectation from the people that have known me. I'm the guy that, did all the charity stuff, the social enterprise stuff, and with two really amazing organizations that even brought, us working with Soma Water a few years ago to go to Ethiopia together. I'm really incredibly grateful for this opportunity that a small town Oklahoma kid has had to run alongside some of the most amazing entrepreneurs, philanthropists, charity workers, social enterprise entrepreneurs there are on the planet. But here I am, I do want to have impact, and I have spent so much of my life as a pastor, as a charity person, like helping other people. And a lot of people in my field end up with this sort of martyr complex of it. It's all about other people and never taking the time to take care of yourself, which is precisely what I had done. It'd been a long time since I'd actually looked at my own life and said, are you happy? Are you healthy? Are you effective in the work that you're trying to do? And I definitely was not by the time I finished my time in San Francisco. And so I find myself in LA and I'm looking around and there's no expectation. The tech industry has disappeared. People really don't know that I'd moved. I didn't tell many people. So here I am in Venice Beach and like this blank slate that I can start writing on again. And I was really cautious as to what to start saying and doing. And as a part of that, I finally started having to listen to that voice that I'd been ignoring for forever, clouding it with all the work and all the busyness of my life in San Francisco. And when things got still and quiet, I was like, oh my gosh, there's this person here that I haven't paid attention to in a while. And he has got some stuff to say. And one of those things was you are definitely not a heterosexual man. And if you want to be healthy in your relationships, you're going to have to address this. And it scared the living daylights out of me. I cannot tell you how much anxiety those early days of switching preferences on dating apps to like, at first it was guys and girls. Like I'll just like start matching and talking to people. And I'd wake up the next morning having only just sent messages back and forth to some guys. And I'd wake up the next morning going, oh my gosh, I'm going to get found out. Somebody saw me. They're going to tell everybody. And It was it's such like a wrong way. Like, but I didn't know how to not be anxious about it. It'd been this long time in the making of, coming to grips with this part of the conversation for me. And,
did you just one day decide to switch your preferences, or did something happen for you to say, okay, I'm going to take the step and actually change my my digital footprint a little bit as it related to the dating apps?
It was easier, right? Because
sure.
If I'd go out with friends in Venice, it wasn't like, hey, here's my might be gay friend Lane that, you should meet. Nothing was happening. And I wasn't, going out by myself in West Hollywood. It was this easy first step that maybe after like a drink or two made it a little bit easier. But the first time having had some even online conversation connection, it was immediately just evident that I was doing something right. I didn't know what it was going to end up being. There was no plan of like, this is my first step in coming out and letting everybody know. It really wasn't that. The decision was, I'm not going to say no to this just because I've always said no to this. Why am I saying no? There's no reason not to explore, and found myself really having this new experience of, oh, okay, this feels different. This is interesting, which, finally led to, it is such a, 2016 story, but, finally led to me meeting up with someone and going out for drinks. And when I remember saying yes to that, of like, I'm going to be outside of my home in public where I can be seen, I was thinking of all the exit strategies that I could have from that restaurant, going, oh, if someone sees me, what are all the excuses I'm going to have? But even though every step of this process really was it was actually really painful. It was, am I really going to do this? The anxiety, what do I do? Every time I made a step forward, it just reinforced that I was at least moving in the right direction. Even if it wasn't obvious, the end destination, that I was at least moving in a direction that was healthy. And there was this moment where I was like, oh, okay, I've been laughing at everybody for my entire life for having emotions around the people that they're dating. And this idea of love, I told myself and my friends that I just either was incapable of feeling love or falling in love. Like something in my brain was broken, or that it just wasn't meant for me. I just didn't know how to relate to people that were, happily in these relationships. And I'd find myself, 3 months into a relationship with an amazing, amazing girl, and they would be way more into the relationship that I was. And I had no sympathy for their position in the relationship. So, as I was learning and clumsily navigating a new world, I felt like the 16, 17-year-old kid that was trying to figure out how to deal with, oh, this is what that is.
If you want to hear the entire episode with Lane Wood, head to the Why Not Now podcast episode number 31 on iTunes, Spotify, or SoundCloud. Also, you can visit amyjomartin.com/Why Not Now Lane Wood to stream the conversation from my website. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/Why Not Now. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time. And until then, why not now?